Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Safari Mack Explores Antarctica. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, I'm glad to see that you all have gotten through so far the Antarctic winter without catching a death of a cold. And what better way to get through the winter than by hanging out with the emperor penguins, or Aptenidites forestieri, if you want to know their Latin name. So today we're going to finish up our time with these birds by looking into some of the wild things about these animals, check out some of the problems that they're facing, and what are the conservation measures that are being taken to help protect these birds from extinction. But now, before we begin, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button, check out my Facebook page for content on conservation, and if you have a question about animals, or if there's an animal that you want me to do in the future, you just have to send me an email, which you will always find the link to down in my description below. But if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started. The wild things. So we know that Dad goes through a pretty hard time of going through the full fury of winter with the extreme storms and the piercing cold, but they know it's worth it in the end when they hear their chicks calling out for the first time. And that's more specifically the hatching. However, they may hear their kid, but they won't see their kid for another 3 days after the first peeps, as it takes chicks literally 3 days just to hatch, thanks to the shell's thickness. Now, unfortunately, the shell isn't always guaranteed to keep them safe. If the egg is exposed onto the ice for more than 60 seconds or a full minute, the embryo inside will die. And so sometimes young couples, often, might be a little rushed or impulsive, and they may accidentally drop their egg. So how do you ensure that this won't happen again? Or what about the adults that have been through this before? What if they seem a little rusty? Well, thankfully, National Geographic actually answered that for us. This year, National Geographic presented their mini-series Secrets of the Penguins, with the first episode focusing on the emperors. And it was caught on film that a couple, while waiting for their egg to be laid, they witnessed a couple actually practicing the maneuvers of transferring the egg from one to the other by using snow to balance on their feet and transfer from one to the other. So, talk about ingenuity. Now, you know how as you get older, you kind of have a sign that you're starting to enter a certain time, like the teenage years? Well, so originally, when the kid first hatches, first they're with their dad, then they're transferred over to their mom, while dad goes off to eat himself, and then switch back and forth. But eventually, as all teenagers know, as you get older, you need to eat a lot to fuel a really fast growth rate. So this is when both parents have to go to the sea to feed. But what about the kids? You can tell that they're starting to get older when they start to form these groups that we call creches as a way of keeping each other alive. So in a way, they're learning to work together instead of against each other. Of course, not all chicks sadly survive to adulthood. As you know, there's usually a death rate that occurs, and every penguin, each year, the parents can react in a really seemingly barbaric way. If a penguin loses one of their chicks, sometimes they are known to actually steal another chick just to raise the kid, as it's a kind of maternal or parental instinct that takes over. So don't think that penguins are always cute and cuddly. These guys can have a little bit of their dark side, somewhat similar to us humans. I'm not saying all humans are, but we know how it can go. Sometimes fear or anger or sadness can make even grown-ups do strange things. Now let's get into their problems and their challenges. Being a penguin, they have a number of predators. For adults, it comes in the form of leopard seals and killer whales. And for chicks, giant petrels and skuas. These two birds will actively hunt, kill, and eat baby penguins. Now, sometimes mom or dad will try to do something, but they can't always. I mean, after all, these aren't flying birds, unlike their predators. Now, of course, that and of course the cold and starvation are everyday matters. But now I'm getting into more of the human side. Now, just because we don't have a permanent base or a permanent settlement in Antarctica, or not, never mind the research stations, it's not to say that we're not causing problems for the emperor penguins. So, sadly, climate change is taking a massive toll on these animals as they are specifically designed for this extreme weather. And part of the problem is with the warming of Antarctica, the ice is getting thinner and thinner and breaking up even earlier to where the chicks haven't even gotten that special coat of feathers that can keep them warm in water. And so if they fall through and land in the water, they can often drown in their baby fluff. So it's not really a good sign. And it can even mess up their way to the fishing grounds or breeding grounds. But it gets worse. So we know that the ocean and trees are natural carbon sinks. So they naturally they're taking all this carbon, storing it, and releasing oxygen, right? But now with this higher influx of carbon dioxide, it's a major challenge for the oceans as well, because it's leading to an event called ocean acidification. When too much carbon is in the water, it can dramatically affect the marine food chains and food supplies. Speaking of food supplies, overfishing is also a major problem in Antarctica. In fact, it was part of the biggest subject in Warner Brothers film Happy Feet, the first one, where our protagonist Mumble, the tap dancing penguin, discovered that we humans, or what the penguins call aliens, are sadly overfishing their food supply. Now in the movie, the humans were able to identify this quickly and started working together to make a change that was beneficial for the species and all of Antarctica. Because not only is the fish gone, but if the krill goes, that's a major piece in the food chain puzzle or pyramid. You take that away, a food chain will collapse. Now we can finish up with their conservation efforts. Now, emperor penguin. Now the efforts are addressed in many ways, from addressing climate change, protecting habitat, even trying to restore sections. Thankfully, the Antarctic Treaty System and international bodies like the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, or CCAMLR for short, are playing a vital role by kind of studying the Antarctic Oceans area and figuring out how we can keep these animals safe by keeping their food secure and preventing more pollution or more human activity on Antarctica. Remember, this was a continent that is founded by science and is dedicated to science as a form of peace. So it's important that we do this to keep the ecosystem in check, because emperor penguins are important indicators of the health of the Antarctic ecosystem. If we can protect them, we can protect their populations and other animals for the future, because lately emperor penguins have been having a bit of a hard time. In fact, in recent years, there have been not too many great successful breeding seasons. In fact, there have been a number of emperor penguins that have sadly failed in trying to bring forth new life. So it's only up to us now that we do our part to protect this incredible species living at the bottom of the earth. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I have for this animal, so join me next week as we uncover one of the emperor penguin's enemies, the leopard seal. But until next week, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you all out there.